but Abinadi in this case understood that, hey, death isn't the end, and what I'm doing right now is more important, and it gave him the courage to stand up and do what needed to be done.
We are Saints in the South, your source for gospel growth and good times. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Saints in the South, episode 220.
All right.
Coming at you. We will excuse Michael, the rogue bishop, for this recording. He is
Got some meetings in Tampa
yes.
tonight. Is that what?
Yep. Got some meetings and everything going on. So taking care of the
Business.
family, making sure he's got that income coming in.
That's right.
So
more and more necessary these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are in Mosiah chapters 11 through 17, and the title is A Light That Can Never Be Darkened. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out here. I don't know if this was a very bad pun intended or what, but it's interesting that the church, the organizers would use this analogy, right, with Abinadi's story here. So here we go. Large fires can start from a single spark.
That's
Abinadi was only one man testifying against a powerful king in his court. His words were rejected for the most part, and he was sentenced to death. Yet his testimony of Jesus Christ, who is the light that can never be darkened, sparked something inside the young priest Alma. And that spark of conversion slowly grew as Alma brought many others to repentance and faith in Jesus Christ. The flames that killed Abinadi eventually died out, but the fire of faith that his words created would have a lasting influence on the Nephites and on people who read his words today. Most of us will never face quite what Abinadi did because of our testimonies, but we all have moments when following Jesus Christ is a test of our courage and faith. Perhaps studying Abinadi's testimony will fan the flames of testimony and courage in your heart as well. Man, they just committed to that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and that's a horrible death to die from, but they went all in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Whole hog.
That's right. I mean, you can't really go halfway with something like that.
No, for sure. I just think that's real interesting.
Yeah, it's like a fire that never goes out.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, it is a cool analogy, though. It makes a lot of sense, man.
It is. It can be used in many different situations. I just, like I say, they just said, you know what? Let's go ahead and use this right here.
They're not shying away from it. Yeah.
No. Mm-mm.
That's how I am. Sometimes I'll say things before I think them through, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's too soon. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Or
right.
Well, I guess, I mean, it's not too soon. It's been enough time has passed since Abinadi's death, I guess, that maybe it's not,
right.
It's not like it just happened last Tuesday or something.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't take offense to this or anything like that. I just think it's interesting that they've decided to use that right here, because again, and this gets me, and I'll go ahead and bring this up, because we read the Book of Mormon, and we read these stories, and I think sometimes we just read them as stories, right? Mm-hmm. That we don't put ourselves in these situations. Like, these were real people, okay, going through real hardships and real deaths, just like Abinadi did. And so when you really think about him being bound, tied up, put before the wicked King Noah, and then being sentenced to death and having to be burned alive, that is, I cannot imagine. That's the last way that I personally would want to die. So with that being said, I've got in my mind the top 5 most shocking deaths in the Book of Mormon. Okay, so
Dun,
I'm going to
dun,
share my 5 with
dun.
you. Here we go.
In order or any random?
You know, I'm going to share my personal top 5. So starting from number 5 down to what I think the number 1 is. Kind of again,
Meaning
getting
number
back
1
to
being the worst.
the worst. That's right.
Okay.
The worst death situation that we read about. Number 1, the man goes down. Do what? Yeah, do what now?
Number 5.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
I got you.
Number
We're on the same
5.
page.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Number 5. This man goes down as a hero, but the original assassin, Mr. Tiankum himself, he snuck into the camp twice, and he killed the king Amalekiah and got out safely. And then the next time he went after this and did this, went into the enemy's camp, Lamanites camp, he killed Amaron. But before he could get out of there, Amaron woke his guards, and they ran him down and killed him. So pretty sad death there. I hated to see him go. I would love to know more about Tiankum. Number 4, the anti-Nephi Lehis, who were former Lamanites who had been converted to the gospel and had promised to never take up arms again, no matter what. And they buried their swords, buried their weapons of war, and they themselves eventually were attacked, and they basically just got down on their knees and were executed and willingly accepted that without a fight at all. That's a pretty shocking death in my mind. I don't know if I would have the willing to follow through on that covenant.
Yeah, it's like you got to overcome instinct. You got to overcome reflex, even not even instinct, but reflex.
Yeah,
that's a tough one. You know, Tiankum, at least. I mean, you're going down fighting.
Right.
That's a tough one. I'm with you. It's kind of unnerving to me, like trying to put myself in that situation.
Yeah, just to literally lay your life down for that. But they were.
It's hard to imagine, man, the depth of the commitment that they had made to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it. I mean, your fight or flight would be kicking in so hard. You know, you'd have to. I can't imagine not either trying to fight them or trying to run away or trying to do something.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sitting there and being like, well, hey, if this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. God's going to save me or is not going to save me. You know, if this is my time, this is my time. Number three is Abinadi's death that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Again, just, you know, dying by that nature, being burned alive. That's the last way that I want to go out.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that's horrible, man. Yeah, I know lots of people have been, you know, burned at the stake throughout human history, but it's hard to imagine.
One of my favorite movies of all time, The Last of the Mohicans. The tribe, they are burning this man, again, burning him alive, and his companions, they had escaped and had gotten out of there, and they, with a rifle, shot him in the head so that he didn't have to continue to suffer through that, which is a very merciful thing for this, you know, for his friends and everything to do. So, number 2, Nephi slaying Laban.
Oh, yeah.
Nephi did not want to do that, and again had to go against what he felt was right, but was brought by the Spirit and was instructed to do that. So a very, very hard thing to do when you wanted to just walk away and leave him there sleeping.
Yeah, that one's interesting because I think that death is more shocking for the killer than the one who died. Laban was passed out. You know, he didn't suffer, but yeah, for Nephi to have to follow through with that, yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And then my number one is the women and children being cast into the furnace, the fiery pit in front of Alma and Amulek. And Amulek asking Alma, why don't we put forth our hands? We have the priesthood power right now. We can save these people. And Alma says, no, the spirit constrains me not to do that. And that their testimonies will go up as a witness against these individuals that are committing this horrible crime here. So that's my number one. To have to be in Alma and Amulek's shoes, knowing that you have the ability and the power to do that, but not be able to do anything about it. So.
Definitely, man. That one's a bad one, or a good example of being a bad situation.
Right. Well, would y'all agree with with my personal top 5 there, or any others that you would want to throw in there?
I might have changed the order of Laban. He's the only one that stands out. I don't disagree with him being on the list, but I might have changed the order on him. So,
yeah, and when I'm talking about shocking, it's shocking for these individuals, but
sure.
just reading about it and really trying to put ourselves in that situation. Kind of like Kenny said, I think it's more shocking for Nephi to have to do that.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely much more of an impact on him. No love lost for Laban, right? But for Nephi, you're like, yeah, because there is kind of an innocence lost there. There's a death of an old you, and so that's not just one person's life ending or changing.
Right.
You're a whole new person after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Having some psychological effects and everything on you, for sure. Being a changed man in an interesting and in a tough way, for sure.
It's interesting to me too to hear soldiers, but particularly the older soldiers, kind of how they squared that, because I don't know. Sometimes I think, and not completely, but in an age where you can fly a drone remotely and drop a bomb, shoot a rocket, whatever. Even air-to-air combat's different, things are different. When you're thinking back to World War II, even Vietnam, Korea, those places, very many of the people are up close and personal when it comes to the killing. There's still a good bit of that. I mean, you listen to Army veterans and special forces and stuff talking about the things they've seen, things they've done, or whatever. But when you think back to World War II specifically, you're talking hundreds of thousands, even millions of people in the theater of combat that is face to face. And so how they squared that with their conscience and stuff.
Right.
I heard a guy recently was saying, when his group was assigned to go to the Eagle's Nest, Hitler's final, or his kind of a mansion or whatever in the mountains and stuff. And he said, I didn't even know what that was. And so we go there and find out what it is. And he said, now boys, I told you not to loot in France and not to loot in Belgium, but this is Germany, so take whatever you want. And he goes, and if any of those SS guys give you any trouble, kill them. And I mean, he seemed very. I guess that's the part that's interesting to me, is whatever they did to square it in their mind, they seem to have no. And I'm sure there's they had their difficulties and stuff, but they seem to understand what side they were on, and they were comfortable with that. And I think that plays a big role in the discussion we're having in these chapters.
Right. Quick.
I think even afterward, though, they I don't know. It's hard to not be affected by that. Even if you're able to justify it in your mind, it's most people. I mean, there are some that are able to deal with it, but I feel like probably
I'm sure you're changed. You're a changed person.
Yeah, that have had to do that, have had to, not only take other people's lives, but to, do things like, I'm trying to remember. There was Jordan Peterson podcast, the recent one with what was her name? Interviewed gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, that had served in Afghanistan and was talking about how they would have to go through and just kick in. There were so many people that were working with the Taliban that they would have to go to house and just kick people's doors in and like search their house because there were people that were hoarding weapons or hoarding money or things for the Taliban. And yeah, she's talking about how much it bothers her to this day, you know, that having to just, and even not even, you know, killing, but just the trauma of, you know, like kicking in people's doors and, you know, babies and children screaming and crying and, you know, you having to go through there and, you know, just the traumatic nature of what they were having to do, even though, you know, knowing that this is something that has to be done and knowing that, you know, the motivations behind it are good and pure and all that is just, yeah, having to do those kind of things. I yeah, can't even imagine. I'm thankful that I was never in that position myself, I guess all I can say. And I was trying to remember, I still can't remember exactly where it is. I was trying to look for it, but Ammon in the Book of Mormon, like when he was killed the robbers, he was cut their arms off.
When
yeah, that's
guarding
chapter,
turkeys.
yeah, that's chapter 17.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
That's when he was guarding the turkeys.
Pretty shocking deaths to just basically just dismember people, just cut their arms and limbs off, and yeah, that'd be a heck of a way to go.
Yeah, man, that's true. That could make the list.
Well, anyway. any spiritual takeaways from from this week's lesson?
I thought that's what the hand chopping off was, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was the spiritual.
I
part.
noticed something interesting. I think it was in chapter 11, early on, maybe verse 4, where they're describing King Noah, and it's amazing to me that just a few chapters ago we're talking about King Benjamin, and it is almost line for line the antithesis of King Benjamin. You know, it's
he
taxes the heck out of his people for his own pleasure, having concubines and not working at all, and just, you know, just generally terrible. and what's interesting, I guess, is, you know, King Benjamin went line by line explaining that this is what I did as a king, you know, to try to live up to the standards I believe are right. And then, you know, just a few chapters later, you're reading about a king with totally opposite behavior, and you see how it plays out, the differences there. But it is interesting, the comparison and the proximity in the scripture of that comparison.
Yeah, I love that you've pointed that out. You know, I think we can think of many leaders, whether it's in history or just in our lifetime, that have exemplified one way or the other, for the good or for the bad, you know, how to lead and how not to lead. And I love how King Benjamin pointed out about the significance and the importance of servant leadership. I think those are the best kind of leaders, those that are willing to be on the front line, so to speak, willing to get their hands dirty and to put in the work. And just as you said, King Noah was the exact opposite. And we can think of, you know, people in our own lives who exemplify that kind of leadership as well. A lot more of go and do that, you know, and bring this back to me and so forth. So I love that you've really pointed that out, and a great opportunity for us to use in different teaching moments, and whether we're teaching our children or classes or, you know, or just different, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity that we as members of the church could use in just having conversations about the scriptures, about our beliefs, about the Book of Mormon, without, in a way, in sharing the gospel in a way without saying, hey, read the Book of Mormon, you should do this, right? You say, hey, you know what?
Right.
we've got two great examples of what it means to be a leader, a good leader, and one that shows us how not to be a leader. Just what a great way to use the Book of Mormon in an everyday life situation and discussion.
Well, and I think it goes deeper too in that as you continue to read there with King Noah, it sometimes is the things you read between the lines that I think are kind of telling too. So, for instance, it does go on for quite a bit about the things that he accomplished that you could say are positive things. I mean, there was lots of buildings, very finely ornamented buildings. That means people had skills, they had labor, they had organization, they had structures, they had engineering. Apparently, they built really tall towers. They had a military. And vineyards, that was mentioned, right? He was a wine bibber,
right?
Not a Justin Bieber, just a wine bibber, but he so you could say, reading between those lines, there was a lot of things being accomplished that many people would say were positive things. They're having these parties, they're
living high on the land, high on the hog, right?
That's right. They had social things going good. They had economic things going good, apparently, from the taxes he was taking from them, building these projects and stuff like that. So I'm sure for a time there, many people were probably thinking like, "Yeah, this is pretty good." It's a fair trade-off. That's the way government works, or whatever. But then you see again the differences in these cultures and stuff. Noah had his tall towers and wine parties and stuff like that, whereas Benjamin had his tower to discuss the gospel with his people, and he had a temple. So very, very different in the cultures as well as the leaders. And is it the chicken or the egg? Does the leader?
Yeah, Noah is a good example.
Culture comes from the leader.
I mean that's how that's often how it works with leaders like that are strong leaders, whether positive or negative. Because really, it kind of reminds me of Adolf Hitler in Germany. What you just described about King Noah, you could describe Adolf Hitler in the same way. Adolf Hitler did a lot of really positive things. I mean, he was in like 1930, he was something, he was a Time Magazine's Man of the Year, on the cover of Time Magazine. The world loved Adolf Hitler because he was doing such good things, man. He was such a great leader. He was pulling Germany up out of the ashes of World War I. Before Adolf Hitler came to power, automobiles were a toy of the rich, basically. And Hitler had a vision of the future of automobiles being a tool used by everyone. And that's why he commissioned Volkswagen. The Volkswagen, literally in German, the people's car. And Adolf Hitler's vision was for cars to become affordable for everyone, not only to purchase one, but be able to operate it. They were really, really fuel efficient. They were easy to work on. They were easy to maintain. And it worked. I mean, the Volkswagen took the world by storm. And, all of a sudden, poor working class people were able to afford vehicles and use them, to get back and forth to work, or use them for their businesses or things like that. So many things that were just amazing accomplishments. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the great accomplishments of Adolf Hitler, because the horrible things he did far, outshined any good that he might have done as a leader. And King Noah, I feel like could be the same way. He did do a lot of things. Obviously, there were some things he did that could have been looked at positively, but overall, the negative things that he did would just really completely diminish.
And think about
things you could have done.
And think about how he did it. They kind of talk about that a little bit, that his dad, right, was not a terrible guy. He was, I think he said, overzealous. Zenith, I think he said he was overzealous.
Overzealous, that's right.
So he kind of got into trouble there. But then his son Noah changed out his kind of leadership structure, his judges,
his cabinet, basically.
Right. Yeah. He starts changing them out to guys that are seeing things his way. Essentially, yes men, right? It's the way I picture it. And so then you have these pet projects, and those things are going well, and you're consolidating power until you become the end all be all, and you get to say what goes, and there's no more representation. If the people are getting what they want, it's mere coincidence at that point, because now he's consolidated power and he can do whatever he wants. And essentially that's how things go, and that's how it falls apart. But that
That is
is
a
an
great
interesting
point. I'm sorry,
thing
Dan,
how
but
that
that's a really, really good point, though, that if things do work out for the good of the people, it's just a coincidence at that point, because
right.
he is, and that's something that I think we see a lot today, even in our own government. There's things, politicians are doing things for their own good and for their own benefit, and if it just so happens that they do something that benefits, some of the citizens, that's fine and good, but that's not the motivation. It's everything
right.
that they do is benefiting them in some way.
That's right. It's just coincidental if you benefited too. And if you did just wait long enough, you're going to get hurt on the next go round. They're going to, their pet project that coincidentally helped you out, it worked this time, but the next pet project may be completely opposite to what you want. It wasn't, I don't know, want to get too off subject here and maybe ruffle feathers and stuff, but there was a clip recently. It was over in the UK, or I think it was in the UK there, where kind of having a discussion in Parliament, and there's two clips of the same politician who's saying, it's he's been asked that question. It's been a hot topic question recently of what is a woman, and he really stammers and struggles and trying to give an answer that doesn't ruffle feathers, and eventually gets to basically people decide whatever it is they want to be, and there's no real hard line on what is a woman. And then however, 2 weeks later, a month later, whatever, he's given a different speech to a different group, and he's complaining about and not just complaining, but basically lambasting the other party for not helping women out when it comes to pay disparity. And so
Yeah.
someone called him out on it. They're like, "Oh, now all of a sudden you know what a woman is." And there's a big difference
Yeah.
between men and women when it comes to pay. But when you're just saying in general, there's it's whatever you want to be. And that's an interesting thing. That's sometimes how it goes, is we kind of pick and choose what things we're going to look the other way on when it comes to leaders, versus yeah, he totally agrees with me, and he's really behind the sentiment that I have in this thing, my pet project or whatever. And it's that whole what do they call it, where you're kind of projecting your values onto someone else kind of thing,
Yeah, it is projecting.
and virtue signaling
Yeah.
too. There's mixed in there with it that, anyway.
Yeah, all that's
Segue.
Yeah. I'm trying to fight back the urge to. There's so many other things that we could go down a whole rabbit hole with that, but
Hey, that's
Sure,
fine,
yeah.
man. That's fine. I think a common word that we see in the Book of Mormon when the people are being industrious, right? It's kind of what we've been describing, and they so King Noah's people, they were an industrious people, right? They had these buildings and fine linens and so forth, and we're succeeding that way. And it's so easy to become distracted eternally, to become focused on those things that we see right in front of us. And that's what Noah was interested in. And so that's the way he steered his people and the people that he led. And that's why leaders are so important, because they can lead a crowd of people in whatever direction that they are heading, whether it's good or bad. And that's
Right.
leaders are critical.
Yeah. When I wanted to comment on that when it comes to Alma. Remind me, because I'll get distracted. But you just mentioned being distracted. But anyway, before I get there, I wanted to say with Abinadi, one of the things that I thought of when it comes to Abinadi and having the fortitude to just kind of, chest out and head up and walk in there and call them out. Knowing that his life was literally on the line. I've thought about that how do you go into situations like that and function? And I think for me, the thought is at some point you become converted enough to where your life is no longer yours to give. If you've given your life over to God, it's his to give, or it's his to save. It's his to do
Yeah.
what with it he wants. And so it really takes the pressure off of you. You just go and do, and then it's going to be what it's going to be. And once you have that kind of conversion, that kind of commitment, then there's really nothing that scares you, whether that's standing up to people, to kings, to dragons, to crowds, to whatever, because that who's got your back. And regardless of the situation, whether it's death, that doesn't bother you.
Yeah.
Death is just a speed bump, and you know what's on the other side. And so, if you can be more used to God here, then he'll spare you. And if not, if your death is more useful to his plan, then it's time to come home, and don't.
That's the way the anti-Nephi-Lehi's felt. Guarantee you.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that's the challenge there. But I don't know. That's what I thought about. Like, you hear about soldiers and stuff. Dakota Meyer, he's a Marine, Medal of Honor recipient. He kind of went into one of those modes in Ganjgal Valley in Afghanistan, trying to save his buddies and stuff like that. And where his life didn't matter, he just went and did. And I think a lot of soldiers, a lot of warriors and stuff like that, that's the mentality is, basically they get to the point where my life is already done. I've already committed 100%. And so once you've reached that decision, there's nothing to hold you back. And I think that applies to the gospel too.
Yeah, we had a good discussion when we were in the Old Testament. We were talking about Noah.
How old are you, Kenny? You were in the Old Testament?
Yeah. It's just like it was yesterday.
When I was a kid.
When we were studying the Old Testament, remember we had a really good discussion about the flood, and about how so many people, I've heard so many people talk about just the story of the flood being something that turned them off from Christianity, or turned them off from, religion in general, just because it's such a horrible, awful thing, and any God who would do that is just a horrible monster. But, we talked about how when you understand life through the lens of eternity, death isn't that big of a deal, really. It's not, and I think I use the analogy of like a football coach, taking some players out of the game. It's, when the coach takes the players out of the game, it sucks, and they might be upset, but ultimately, especially if a player's messing up and he's costing, he could possibly, he's going to cost the team, even if that player doesn't like being taken out of the game, once, he sees from the sidelines how he was messing up, and he's like, okay, maybe that was the best thing for the coach to do. And I kind of feel like when God flooded the earth, it was kind of like, taking some players out of the game. And yeah, nobody wants to die, but when you understand life through the lens of eternity, all those people, they weren't gone. They were just, they went home. God called them home because they were messing up, and they were costing, they were going to cost the whole game if they didn't get out. So I think Abinadi definitely understood life through the lens of eternity in that way. And he understood what was really important and what mattered.
Yeah. I think too, in my experience, people that seem to have the hardest time with death also seem to have a hard time with life, if that makes any sense. Like, so I've dealt with a lot of dying people in my years in medicine and stuff, working in trauma and ICU and all that. And there's some generational differences for sure on the approach to death and things like that. But many times, if it's an older person, they're like, I'm ready, that's no big deal. But it's the children or grandchildren that are like, no way, grandma's got to make it to 100, and, and you're going, wow, that's a very very big goal, but and not necessarily in line with the person's wishes. So, but the more you talk to them and stuff, it seems like they're having a hard time with life and what's the purpose of it, and gaining real joy out of it rather than just entertainment and distractions. Back to Jackson's comment of being distracted. And so when we're distracted and we're missing out on the big points to life and the real joys that life has to offer, we're trying to make it into things that it's not, then we have a hard time with living. And because of that, I think we have a hard time with dying.
Yeah. When you understand life, like I was saying a minute ago, through the lens of eternity, and it is selfish sometimes to, but it's hard to not be selfish when you're talking about losing someone that you love.
Mhm.
It reminds me of when my father-in-law, before he passed, we were, he was in the nursing home and his health was declining. And I think I might have shared the story before, but it was a really powerful for me because um he had gotten to the point where his quality of life has significantly declined, and there was no chance of it improving, really. And we went to visit him one night, and my wife, my I guess since Rogue Bishop's not here, I have to be the one to cry tonight.
Somebody
But
cutting onions over there.
yeah, my wife asked me to give him a blessing, and he was not even lucid at the moment. He was kind of out of it, and she asked me if I would give him a blessing that he would be able to just go ahead and pass on. And I did. And yeah, I gave him a blessing just of comfort to know that his work here was done and that it was okay for him to just go ahead and go back home. And yeah, the nursing home called us later that night that he had passed peacefully in his sleep.
Wow.
But it's easy. It can be really easy in times like that to, yeah, like you said, be scared of death because it seems so, so finite, and understanding, our role in eternity. And if somebody like Abinadi we're talking about, he understood, that the task that he had at hand far outweighed his, and obviously, we all have a desire to live. That's the strongest instinct that we have. Even if someone's standing on a ledge contemplating suicide, if you try to push them, they're going to instinctively try to catch themselves. It's such even if you want to end your life,
Do
it's
not try
hard
this
to
at home.
do it.
I said, do not try this at home.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's so hard. You literally, like we were talking about a while ago, you have to override your strongest instincts. But Abinadi in this case understood that, hey, death isn't the end, and what I'm doing right now is more important. And it gave him the courage to stand up and do what needed to be done.
Yeah, old Benadiah, he's a tough one. He's tougher than Tarzan's feet.
That's right.
I love that. I say original, but kind of the famous one with him standing there in the chains. You got Noah and his priest surrounding. And of course, Alma is in that painting there. But he's like a 75, 80-year-old man, ripped up from the floor up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just hard, just
Shredded.
hard as a shred. He's been through it, son. He ain't scared.
Did not miss arm day. Well, mentioning Alma, that was where I was going to go with talking about being distracted and stuff like that. So this definitely folds right in with the things we'll cover later in Alma with the seed and faith and growing and all that type of stuff, right? This is it playing out. This is essentially foreshadowing of that speech right there, where Abinadi testifies, he plants the seed. What's fascinating though is Alma, presumably as the other priests of Noah, knew scripture. Like they could quote scripture. So
Yeah.
they had the knowledge. They didn't have the heart for it though. They didn't have the conversion as King Benjamin and his people did. Like his people were churchgoers and saints and stuff, but they still had that mighty change of heart. That's kind of what sets you apart. It's not what's up here necessarily, though that is a component. It's what happened, what's happening in your heart, right? And so with Alma, that seed was planted. But it was just Alma. That was one of the things, like, numbers wise is not in his favor, but they kind of mentioned that in the intro to these chapters. But what I was going to comment on, and we've talked about this before, is King Noah's world, his society, his culture, as ours is, in my opinion, is set up to keep people distracted. It's set up to keep people from sitting on rocking chairs on porches thinking about life. It's set up to prevent people from having time to go fishing with their kids and talk about life and talk about school and talk about friends and bullies and what is right and what is wrong and standing up for what is right. We're set up to be entertained, not set up to learn and grow and become our own selves, become our own individual selves,
It's a pattern we've seen repeated many times throughout history, right? That's the Roman Empire was the same way, the greatest empire the world had ever seen at that time. And everything was about entertainment, keeping the people entertained, keep them distracted.
Right. And that's King Noah's group, his culture. That's what's going on there too. But that's the thing, because they're entertained, because they're distracted, then they never stop to question, what's this life about? And question and to kind of experiment with the word, to let that seed of faith grow and to have that mighty change of heart. They're too busy being distracted.
And I'll point out right here real quick that even you talking about a seed being planted rather than a fire being started with a spark in Alma's heart, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So the seed being planted just fits a little better.
That's right. Fires can grow too, but seeds are a little bit less.
That's right.
less
That's
harmful.
right.
But to your point there, with things like that, I pointed this out to the youth. I think last week I was subbing in for the older kids and pointed out that it's interesting that they use the seed multiple times throughout the gospel and the Bible and the Book of Mormon and everything. Seeds grow. That's inherent in just mentioning a seed. You get the concept of it starts small and it grows. And if you take care of it, it grows into something huge, mighty, strong, fruitful, all these positive things. But it's not just that it's small. I mean, the Lord could have said, we could have used all these examples of a grain of sand or a small pebble or anything else. If you wanted to say that it's small, all you need is a little bit, then you could use one of those. But he didn't. He used seed. And frequently that is the case. Seed.
And you never know who's really listening, who's going to be pricked in their heart by the Spirit, and who's going to take that opportunity to really run with the things that you have shared or taught.
Right.
And that one soul that the Lord speaks of, that Abinadi was able to connect with that he didn't even realize that he connected with, ended up, changing and turning a generation of individuals and converting many, many people.
Yeah.
Well, you
Good
got
stuff.
anything else?
Oh, there's so much in this lesson.
Always is for sure.
Yeah, we could go on for hours.
Yep.
But I don't think anybody wants to listen to us talk for hours and hours.
Do you think, this is a question, maybe it's quick, maybe it's not. Do you think it can be taught to be able to stand up and speak out, to have courage, essentially, the reason I ask is I think we could all identify people that it seems like it just comes naturally, like from a young age.
Mhm.
They would, they wouldn't be intimidated. So I can
Yeah.
think of one. It's a distant relative of mine. He when he was a young boy, um, oh man, he must have been like pre-K, kindergarten age, something like that, 4 or 5 years old. He's in the park, and this biker dude was just hanging out in the park, and I want to say he was playing a musical instrument, and I can't remember whether it was a guitar or something, but it was a bit unusual. This biker dude, kind of grizzly looking, tattoos all over and stuff. And he's sitting in the park on a bench or something, playing some musical instrument. And this little boy kind of walks over there with my uncle, and he says, "What what are you doing?" or whatever, and just talks to this biker dude. And the biker guy said something. He turned to him and pointed to me. He's like, "You want to learn how to play?" And before he could even finish, like, "You want to learn how to play?" He said, "Hey, don't point your finger at me." He's like 4 or 5 years old talking to a stranger biker dude. He's like, "Don't point your finger at me." And he's like, "Oh, sorry, like, would you like to learn how to play or something?" But it just an interesting. I remember him telling me that story, and I just laughed
Yeah.
because I thought, man, what not intimidated at all.
Well, I think
And
that people do have that in them. There is an
Mhm.
inherent trait, but it can be cultivated or squelched.
No.
James Dobson wrote a book called "The Strong-Willed Child." It was published in, I think, 1978, where he talks about that, how parents of having a strong-willed child can be a real challenge, as anybody who's had one could tell
Why are
you.
you smiling, Jackson?
Because I'm itching at the opportunity to share an experience with you. Go ahead. Go ahead,
So
Kenny.
yeah, just to say real quick, the thesis basically of his book is that if you have a strong-willed child, the important thing to do, the most important thing you can do as a parent, is to guide that strong will in the right direction rather than
Mhm.
squelch it, because those strong-willed children, the ones that are hard-headed, that are opinionated, that don't want to listen, those are the ones that often grow up to be the strongest leaders. Those are the ones who often grow up to be the people who change the world. If you can manage to raise that child in a way to help them focus that strong will in a positive way. Anyway, what were you saying?
Yeah. So first of all, I love that you bring this up, Joe. And this is kind of the conversations that I really want to have. It's just a small example, but so to both of your points, literally this past weekend, and I've shared it before, so everybody that's listened to the show before knows that my younger son Chase, he's the one that you're describing right now. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, so we're in the living room, and to try and keep the story fairly short, he's trying to get away with some stuff, and I confront him on it. And he keeps going, he kind of keeps going at me. And we've got this little basketball goal that hangs on the door, and it's a little basketball. And out of my frustration with him continually doing what he's doing, I I I didn't throw the ball at him, but I gave it back to him pretty swiftly, pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
And
A
so and
precipitous pass.
there you go. And so so I failed in that instance there, where I didn't, he was my temper kept rising and rising. Anyway, he said, and he tells me, he says, "Chill out, Dad." And son, talking about not chilling, talking about not chilling out. I didn't chill out.
Yeah.
And I grabbed that joker by the arm, and my older son Brody, who's never come anywhere near saying anything like that, to me or his mom. I grab him out of the arm and I take him outside, and it's been a while. He's 13 years old. It's been a while since I've spanked him. I spanked him really good, and then proceeded to have a conversation with him. And the way I closed that conversation out was, I said, Chase, I said, I love that you aren't willing to take anything from anybody. I love that you're willing to stand up for yourself, and that you're willing to speak your mind, and that you're willing to, to push the envelope, and I told him about how great of a quality that is, and that is to have. I said, but what you got to do is you got to learn how to use it, when to use it, who to use it with. I said, just take that what you have inside you, and steer it in a direction that's going to help you be successful and to do a lot of good in the world. Because if you do that, you will do a ton of good in this world.
That's right.
And have a lot of success. And so I wanted to make sure that he knew that what he experiences and comes out in him a lot, it's a great character. I told him, I said, I wish I had that character trait coming up. So it's, anyway, you just made me smile from ear to ear thinking about that experience. Cause
good job, Dad. Good job.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
awesome.
That's it. I'm really, really impressed with that because, my oldest son was very strong-willed, and
is he the police officer?
Yeah, the one's a police officer now. Yeah, I wish now that there's so many things that I could have handled better, because, man, when they push your buttons like that, it's so hard to think clearly in that moment enough to do what you did and be like, listen, this quality that you have is great as long as you're able to focus it in the right direction, rather than just being like, listen, you ain't going to talk to me like that. I don't care how big you think you are.
Right. And now, and all transparency, I said all that. I'm like, look, you're not going to talk to me that way. You're not going to talk to your mama that way. Okay. I said, if you continue to do that, it's not going to end well for you. And I made sure that was 100% clear. And then that's, the scripture, Doctrine and Covenants, reproving be times when moved upon by the Spirit. I don't know if I was moved upon by the Spirit to discipline the way I did, but then showing forth afterwards an increase in love to him whom thou hast reproved. And so, and that's what I, used that last part of that conversation with. And I mean, we both were crying and hugging it out and everything and stuff. So it was, it ended well. And again, I'm the one that kind of didn't maintain my cool in the first place by kind of chunking the ball at him. So
yeah.
Good old parenting times, man. I tell you what.
Hey, the saying goes that some of these people around here ain't been snatched up by their grandma and whooped in a circle, and it shows.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
I've been there.
Yeah. Well, all righty. Well, we're going to bring it to a close right here. Y'all be sure and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit your notification bells. Share this with friends and family, and we appreciate the support. Y'all keep on striving.